Okay, welcome to Memory Milestones, where we're going to share all of our first experiences. So our first question is, what was your first job?
Well, I had graduated. I got my nurse's license, and we moved to Fort Stockton, Texas. And my husband was a surveyor at that time. And I was working 7 to 3. We were the only hospital for 70 miles.
Oh, wow.
And I left and I had gone home about 4 o'clock. And they said, you've got to get back to the hospital. There's been an explosion on an oil rig, and we've got 70 burn patients coming in.
Wow.
So I got back, and the medical director said, well, what I want you to do is that I want you to triage, and I want you to give everybody, until he told me such and such and such. And I said, okay.
Wow.
None of them spoke English. Not the first one. And so we took care of them. A bunch of them we sent off in the back end of a truck.
Oh my gosh.
On, you know. And so when we, after we left there, we moved to Pecos, Texas. And lo and behold, there came some of the same patients that had been burned so bad. And they said, Miss Lee, you're working up here now? And I said, I sure am.
No.
It was just before I was 17 years old, and I started a college at the Teachers College that in Springfield. And it was a turning point in my life because I taught that year, and for 37 years after that I taught school. So that was a major turning point as far as I was concerned in my whole life. There were lots of other firsts, marriage and birth and other things, but that was the thing that I stuck through all my life. And it was 37 years when I retired.
Wow.
I worked at Newberry's down in Portland, Oregon, during my summer break when I was in high school, and it was a large one because they didn't have malls at that time. It was 2 stories, and downstairs was where I went was the pet store, and I catch the little fish, sort of.
That's fun.
I worked at the 5 and 10 cent store, and my daddy owned a business, and I would always, I'd help him on the weekends, but I needed money. So I went to the 5 and 10 cent store, and no matter what they had to produce or sell that weekend, they always put me on this promotional counter. They said I could sell ice to Eskimos, and I probably could, but you know, it just was, I was a salesperson. I made my living all my life as a salesperson.
I go back in history because I was born in the 20s during the Depression, and we had to go out and pick up walnuts, pick beans in order to get food, and we also went out in the hot fields to sell magazines to the workers. And then I ended up working in a turkey factory, and it was, you wore a heavy rain jacket, and the turkeys came down on a rack, and you had to put a wing in and flip it and do the other wing, and that took the feathers off of the turkeys, okay?
Oh,
so by the time I got through all of that, I finally got a job at Moss Stores, clerking a little bit, but then I immediately after graduation from high school, I went to nurses training. And then it just kept rolling after that. I was a perennial student.
Our next question is to tell us about your first date. We're getting into the good questions now.
In high school prom, and it was before all the guys had to leave for the service. And so his name was J. Morris Crooks, and he was actually sent me a kimono, a real kimono from Japan during his service time.
Wow.
But then that all passed because we all went different directions. That's it.
I was in nurses training, and I trained at Mississippi Baptist Hospital. And my husband, he wasn't my husband then, but he was home. He was a skiing instructor in Aspen.
Yeah.
And he was home visiting his relatives. And so I had a knock on the door, and they said, "Do you want to go riding?" And when I got out to the car, it was like 3 girls or 4 girls and him. And I said, "Well, you're going to have to move over because I don't ride with just anybody." I said, "You can get in the back seat and I'm going to drive." Well, when we came back, I was the last one that he took home.
Yeah, my first date was I was a freshman in high school, and I was asked by a fellow to the senior prom.
Oh.
And I was 13. So.
And he was a senior?
And he was a senior. We went to the senior prom and we came home. That was it.